you, Robert, for the introduction. I'm currently the CEO and co-founder of A³&Co. We operate in Middle East and Africa and some areas around the globe as well. Today's presentation is about decarbonization as an opportunity in the MENA sector. And decarbonization has always been discussed in a gloomy or a crisis approach. It has always been perceived by the cement industry and for the cement industry as a burden, and cement industry is in the center of attention from a carbon emission point of view. So cement industry only represents 7% of the total CO2 of the world, yet the main issue is concrete. We are the main contributor to concrete, and concrete is the second most abundant material in the world after water. So we are everywhere. As you said, your magazine is read everywhere in the world, and cement is produced everywhere in the world, and there is no development or advancement without concrete. So today I will try to shed the light on decarbonization, not as only a challenge, but also as an opportunity in the MENA sector. Yeah, to be able to see that, we'll have to look at our market overview, then look at the perception versus the reality of decarbonization in the MENA sector, and then go for how to decarbonize while adding value to the economy of the country and the cement sector in specific. The market overview. Our markets are generally healthy markets from a demand perspective. We have around 680 million metric ton in 2021, with an expected or future outlook of 5.5% CAGR growth during the forecast period between 2022 and 2027, reaching an average of 940 million tons by 2027. So in general, we don't have a demand issue. Yet, most of our countries in the MENA region are oversupplied sectors. The overall utilization of cement sector in the region is around 70%. This has an impact, of course, on the sector profitability, on the operation approach of the cement sector. We also are a main player in the export market, which adds a lot to the or helps a lot in the underutilization of our countries. So we have some main features. We have good demand. GCC average of demand per capita is almost double Africa. The overall MENA region per capita cement consumption is 30% higher than the average of the world. Consequently, we consume a lot of cement, which means a lot of concrete, which means a higher footprint. In addition to, we have higher capacity. So we produce a lot of cement, which means also higher carbon footprint. In addition to, we are the center of the oil, fossil fuels of the world. Consequently, we also have higher footprint. If we added Africa, we are also the center of coal in the world, which means we have all what it needs to make us in the center of attention of a climate challenge approach. Generally, all the markets in the world are hit by two main crises: Ukraine crisis and the supply chain crisis. Ukraine crisis impacted prices, impacted geopolitical scenario and a lot of issues, but it has also its positive side of the coin. Oil prices increased, given a positive impact on most of the GDPs in GCC and in our region. Yet also an increase on fuel prices, which means clean energy is currently becoming a more economical, feasible solution to many of our countries. On top of that, of course, Morocco and Emirates are ahead of the rest of the pack. From a supply chain point of view, we have seen the crisis starting with COVID, and it has propagated and increased forward. Anybody who is with us today who has something to do with cement export would have felt that challenge firsthand. In some cases, freight price of moving a ton of clinker is more than its actual FOB price, and sometimes equal to its landed price. So prices of imported cement and clinker has increased due to freight rates. That means a constraint and an impact on the volume of export, and generally a change of the export volumes map between the region and globally as well. Given this data about the market, we can now understand the fact that we produce a lot of cement, we produce a lot of clinker, we have a high carbon footprint. Generally speaking, the perception of net zero in the cement industry is like that. Cement industry scientifically is a hard to abate industry. It requires 100% cost increase or more to achieve net zero. Technology required for net zero is sophisticated and expensive. Generally speaking, net zero pathway is a net negative impact on the BU and an added burden. Fortunately for the cement industry, in many cases, real cases that are actually happening now, this is not the reality for the sector. The reality is 30% of the CO2 footprint is achievable at no investment. 50% of the total footprint reduction is achievable by investments that are within the threshold of the cement industry, that are actually cost reduction initiatives that will have an ROI within 2 to 5 years and consequently positively impact the bottom line and also reduce CO2. We are talking about almost 75% of the total CO2 reduction can be achieved within margins. To be very specific, it's 57%. 57% of the CO2 of the cement industry in MENA region can be reduced within the normal investment capital threshold of cement plants. Consequently, we can say that the net zero pathway is an opportunity for the cement industry in MENA. Given the oversupply under demand of our markets, cost reduction is the leeway. Cost reduction is the best approach to sustain positive, healthy operation of our cement sector in our region. And we can do that while reducing around 57% of our CO2 footprint. Yet, this opportunity is only achievable when we have a well-strategized, technically effective net zero roadmap. And this is what I will try to indicate during this presentation. To do that, and believing in that, A³&Co and World Cement Association have joined forces towards a unified decarbonization roadmap that will serve climate goals of the MENA and Africa region, so GCC and Africa regions, while being done by cement people, thus in the best interest of the sector. Our idea is decrease carbon while decreasing cost. And this is supported by a momentum. It could be looked at as a disadvantage or an advantage, depending on the perspective we are looking at the challenge or the opportunity from. There is always a two coincided approach. We have the COP27 coming in Egypt in November 2022. We have the COP28 coming in November in Dubai, COP28. Which means that the whole globe will have a focus on the GRG, the climate action, the climate challenge in our region, in two countries that represent two of the top 10, that represents countries of the top producers of cement. So cement sector will be also under focus. So let's see from a GHG, where do we stand? The MENA region represents around 7% of global GHG emissions. highest being Saudi Arabia represents around 1.5% of the global GHG, followed by Egypt, Algeria, Iraq, and Emirates. Funny thing is that those 5 countries are again the top producers of cement in our sector and are among the top producers of the world. You have Egypt at the 9th position, so top 10. You have Saudi Arabia at 11th. When we close the next year, it will be again in the top 10. So we have 2 countries in the top 10 producers. We have UAE, Algeria, and Iraq between 21 and 34 position rank from a cement produced tonnage point of view. That means from a GHG, we are at focus. From climate, we will be at focus within COP. From cement sector point of view, we are major producers, which means cement is under the focus of our country's governments to achieve their commitments towards the COP, and of the world as our role to decrease GHG for the climate. If we looked at our country's NDCs, the national determined commitments of our countries and how they are assessed from a climate meter point of view, I have listed, for example, the top 3 producers of cement: Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and UAE in our region. They are looked at as highly insufficient. If you compare to Europe, its overall rating is only insufficient, which means the gap is not huge. We are all starting to work properly on climate, so we can still be leading the race from a cement sector point of view. If you looked at the comparison, you will find the main difference here in the comprehensiveness of our roadmaps. So in Egypt, it's not comprehensive. In Saudi Arabia, in Emirates as well. If you looked at it in Europe, you will find it acceptable. Its comprehensiveness is rated as acceptable. One of the main gaps in comprehensiveness of the NDCs of our countries is the absence of a detailed roadmap for each sector, which is called on a COP level, the sectorial decarbonization roadmap. And this is what we are trying, us and WCA, A³&Co and WCA, to help the sector reach within the Middle East. So let's look more from a more detailed approach on the NDCs. Generally speaking, MENA NDCs doesn't reflect a strong position from a climate ambition point of view. We represent 7% of the total global GHG emissions. We also, represent 7% of the cement industry share from a production point of view. That includes China and India. If we remove China and India, our percentage goes much higher. We have countries that have stronger NDC targets updated, like Morocco, Saudi Arabia, Emirates, and Bahrain. We have countries that listed new NDCs, which means they didn't have before: Lebanon, Jordan, Iraq, Kuwait, and Oman. And we have countries that stick yet to their NDC and most probably will update before COP, just before November. This is the rest of the region. As a matter of fact, Egypt is updating its NDC, and cement will be under high focus within this NDC. So what we see is a unified roadmap of MENA cement sector would highly improve the status of the region prior to the next 2 COPs in Egypt and UAE. So let's come to the role of cement industry. As we could see, we are in the center of attention. We represent a high portion of our country's CO2 footprint. For example, in Egypt, it's around 30%. In Saudi Arabia, it's 15%. In Emirates, if I added concrete, we are talking about 60% of the total GHG emissions. So what we are talking about is a major contribution to the CO2 footprint of our countries. And for the good of us, it's coming in the best of our bottom line. It's exactly the strategy that we need to adopt for our markets. And we'll do that while decreasing CO2 footprints. Just to imagine, the value of the CO2 that we have regionally, which means MENA region, we have an average of approximately 860 kilogram CO2 per ton of cement. This is the footprint of cement plants within our region, average value. We can bring that down to 480, which is the benchmark of Europe at minimum investment. This means 47% reduction. To imagine the impact of 47% reduction, 1% reduction on annual basis in a 4,500 ton per day cement plant is equivalent to 4 million tons, 4 million liters of gasoline consumed per year. Just to imagine, one barrel, this 4 million is around 20,000 barrels of oil. It's also equivalent to around 12,000 acres of forest, which our countries cannot implement. I'm talking about only 1%. 12,000 acres is 50 kilometers square. This is half the area of Emirates. Only 1%. So you can imagine that if we made the 47%, it's as if we made the GCC desert a forest. This is a lot of trees and a lot of oil barrels equivalent CO2 saved. This is a main impact on our country's indices and a major contribution of the cement sector to the country initiative, to the climate action globally, and also while adding positive economical value to our economies and to our operations. So that's great. It's nice to have an ambition. It's nice to dream, but actually, how can we do it? This is what I will try to summarize very quickly in the coming roadmap, and details will be hopefully later. So if we looked at my 47%, I'm trying to instill and repeating continuously, 47% CO2 reduction, reaching down to the EU benchmark in the first 2 years. In 2 years' time, let's say 3 years' time, the direction, the ambition is to achieve this 47% before 2030. This is Glasgow Climate Pact. This is what the countries have agreed to. This is what will keep our region within at least the 2 degrees pathway. How to do that? First thing is operational excellence, which means mainly energy optimization, capacity enhancement, improvement, quality increase at higher reliability. This is simply operational excellence. This is all in the benefit of our operations. This is highly doable. This is done in many of plants within our region with great proven results. They just need to move from an optimization strategy to an operational excellence strategy. Optimization is only incremental increase. Operational excellence is a holistic strategy that improves all the sides of the business unit. Then product portfolio optimization, which is a competitive edge from a market point of view. It means you will produce more products. It means you will utilize your clinker in a various bigger threshold of products. It means a better pricing strategy. It has a challenge of some policy and standards within our region, but it's within the current, we can use the current pressure and momentum of the climate change to impact and influence these policies towards SEM2, but we first need to reach the right clinker quality to make this SEM2 and SEM3 viable for utilization of construction. Last but not least, the investment part, where we use waste heat recovery or equivalent energy recovery solutions, in addition to alternative fuels, RDF in GCC, biomass in North Africa, or a mix of in countries that can do both. Up to this limit, by numbers, by factual based case studies, to many plants, this is equivalent to 47% reduction of CO2 per ton of cement when you are coming from 800 around the 800 value, 850 or 750, and around $10 reduction in cost. This in some countries is around 50% of the cost, in others it's around 20-25. So we are talking about a minimum of 20% cost reduction and 47% CO2 reduction. Remember, 1% is 50 kilometers square of forest, half the size of Emirates. Then an extra miles approach, which is the calcined clay or belite cement, which has still a lot of challenges from a policy making point of view, but there is quite improvement, and there are countries that are starting to adopt the solution, especially in Africa, where they cannot produce clinker due to lack of limestone. So calcined clay is being a very proven concept. Belite cement as well is quite starting to get approved concept within China and other countries. That is another 10%. And the beauty of that is it's doable within an existing plant, belite cement, or an expansion at a much lower investment cost with calcined clay. This is up to 2030. This is around 57% reduction. Then we go for the hard stuff. This is by Climate Pact, by Glasgow directives, is only required after 2030. Of course, R&D has to start from today. Of course, pilot plants have to start from today, which is second generation oxyfuels, carbon capture, and hydrogen fuel. This is sophisticated, not yet economically proven solutions, but they are on the way, and they are scientifically viable solutions, but we need them in the cement industry after 2030 to reach the net zero, to reach 0% carbon, or even carbon neutral, or even carbon positive solution. So just to conclude, make sure of the facts: 1%, 50 kilometers square of forest, or 12,000 acres. This is 4 million liters of gasoline, equivalent to 20,000 barrels of oil. This is only 1% from a 4,000 ton per day plant. The average of the cement industry in Saudi Arabia, for example, is around 8,000 ton per plant. In Egypt, it's around 6,000. So 1% in our major players like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Emirates, Algeria, and Iraq is a major contribution to the whole world from a CO2 to our countries. And the most important thing is we do that while adding positive impact to our bottom line. If I could make you interested, and if you believed what I've said, and if you think that scientifically what I'm saying is doable, and if you want to do more about that, we are organizing, supporting, and the organization of a conference for navigating the climate challenge with the title clear mention, reducing carbon while reducing cost, with World Cement Association in Emirates, Dubai, Emirates Towers, between 25th and 28th of September, where we are availing a platform to cover decarbonization program from A to Z, which means all the details of the roadmap will be micro detailed, scientifically and industrial, with proven results. In addition to an innovation for net future, where we bring all the solution providers, so real solution, real people, face-to-face meeting discussions, towards having sustainable partnership between producers, investors, and suppliers of the solution, committing and strategizing towards a roadmap for decarbonizing the sector by 47%, hopefully 57% before 2030, and laying the way for the future after 2030 for a net zero future of our cement industry. Thank you very much, and I hope it was viable to everyone. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Rob.
Thank you very much, Amma, for a very interesting presentation. Thank you very much indeed for letting us know about the general situation in the Middle East, North Africa. Oh, just keep up your presentation. Your final slide, please. Thank you, thank you. Very, very useful. We have a couple of questions. We don't have very much time, but let me just crack into these. So Konstantin Stepanov says, how will you reduce the cement CO2 footprint by 47% if you will invest nothing into decarbonisation projects such as alternative fuels and lower clinker cements like PLC? How do you think you can do that essentially without investing anything?
The part of investing, not investing anything, is the first two steps. If I can go one slide back, so my roadmap, you would see that this is the no investment part, operational excellence, product portfolio optimization. From here, it's the investment part. So with minimum investments as mentioned, these are investments that are within the normal capital investment threshold of cement industries. These are investments that we were doing, we should continue doing, we should do more of it in a much bigger scale and a more optimized approach to increase the CO2 reduction, and it is within our threshold of capital investment. It's not extra investment, and it is in line with cost reduction. So this is the investment that is included.
Konstantin Stepanov has one additional question. He essentially asks, do you think that there's the possibility that there will be carbon capture and sequestration in the Middle East, North Africa before 2030?
Absolutely not, and it doesn't make any sense to go for it. It's just stalling going forward on decarbonization. Carbon capture is a major investment. It's not yet economically viable on a cement industry level. It's a great technology, but it requires, first of all, circularity, because the carbon you store, you need to use. It requires circularity, it requires policy making. It's not only about building a carbon capture storage within a cement plant. In addition to, currently its cost in an oversupply, under demand market is adding almost 70–80% extra cost on the product, which will erode the margins of the cement sector that is currently already eroded.
Very good. Amma, do you know what? We have run out of time, unfortunately, for any further questions, but I'd like to thank you once again for a very nice presentation and wish you the best of luck with your event in Dubai.
Thank you very much, Rob. Always a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Amma.